When you open the BPA tool, you will land on the Security Policy Capability Adoption Heatmaps page, which displays the adoption summary graphs. Let's go through the various tabs at the top of the page, starting with the Trending tab. On the Trending tab, you will see various metrics displayed across multiple columns. The columns across will have a date and timestamp. These represent when a BPA report was run for a serial number or device. The metric column displays the different feature capabilities. Each number under the columns indicates the capability adoption percentage collected from the BPA report run on the date and time. The customer started running BPA reports for this device on March 24, 2017 through May 2018. With the number of columns shown, this indicates the customer has run this device 8 times to monitor their performance and evaluate their progress. Look at the original wildfire adoption on March 24, 2017. It started off with only 4% adoption. Looking across the rows at future dates, we can see adoption increasing to what is currently 78%. The table shows consistent improvement in progress and adoption of wildfire. The user ID adoption percentage started at 17% and grew to 30%. Even though this is not a significant change, it indicates an improvement in growth. The industry average allows us to identify how the company is doing in comparison to their industry's average. The wildfire adoption for the high-tech industry average is 38%, whereas this company is at 78%. This company is doing better than the average in their industry. The industry average displayed in this column will correlate with the industry the company falls into, so you can see different information here for different companies. The trending page gives you an overall view of each capability adoption and how it progresses over time. You will also be able to compare how the company is doing in their adoption versus the industry average. The Device Groups page is going to display all the device groups currently configured. The data on this tab is the same data displayed across the various tabs represented in different ways. Let's focus on the Device Group column. The Device Group column lists the different device groups currently configured. Moving across the row, you can see how many rules are configured and allowed. The first device group, DC1, currently has 252 allow rules. Out of the 252 allow rules, 74% of the rules have vulnerability protection enabled, and 94% of the rules have ports defined. DC1 looks to be the primary device group with the most rules. We can also see the other device groups and their rules below. The grand total at the bottom is the sum of the rule numbers for all device groups as well as the average calculation for each capability adoption. You can identify the adoption of various capabilities, and you will be able to understand if the company's adoption of certain capabilities are expected or if there is room for growth. Look at the data filtering adoption column. This capability is at 0% and is not configured for any of the security groups. This probably indicates data filtering is not a requirement for the company. File blocking is configured with an average adoption of 77%. However, not all security groups were configured. If these security groups were not purposely configured to be 0%, this would be identified as a security gap and will need to be patched. For times you want to narrow the data shown, you can use the column filters in the upper right corner. This gives you the ability to select and display only the data you want to see. You can select one or more multiple options, which will display once you click Apply Filters. Filters can help you locate specific information that needs to be analyzed to determine the right actions to take. If you wanted to export the filtered data into an Excel spreadsheet, you can click the Export Data button. This will export only the filtered data displayed on screen. If you prefer to export all the data, clear the filters before you click the Export Data button. Another important feature is the Enable Best Practice Mode option. Notice the change on the heat map when you enable Best Practice Mode option is checked. When this option is not checked, the heat map shows the antivirus adoption at 78.3%. But when Enable Best Practice Mode is selected, the antivirus adoption is at 0%. This indicates the antivirus profile is not aligned to best practices. Let's go to the Best Practice Assessment tool and click on the Objects tabs for an example. Under the Objects tab, we want to look at the antivirus security profiles. Here we can see one of the antivirus profiles, Internal Core. This profile ran 3 best practice checks where 2 passed and 1 failed. We are going to assume the Internal Core profile was applied to the policies. If all 3 checks were green, this would mean all 3 best practice checks passed in the Internal Core antivirus profile, so they would have aligned for best practice mode. Since one of the checks failed, no credit is given for best practice mode under antivirus. In summary, all the best practice checks under a profile should pass for the profile to get credit to comply with best practice mode. The serial number in Vsys page lists the serial numbers or devices and the policies that are applied to them. The serial numbers are displayed under the target device column. Moving across the row, you can see the adoption percentage for enabled policies. Using the column filters, you can narrow down to specific serial numbers. From the columns filter, you can select the serial number and click Apply Filters to only show the policies for the selected serial numbers. The zone page lets you see how many rules are configured between two different zones, which are listed in the first and second columns. The first column is the source zone, and the second column is the destination zone. Look at the first row. The first zone source is LAN, and the destination zone is data center. Between these two zones, there are 315 rules that are permitting traffic. Looking at the flows below, you can see the other rules configured between the different zones. The majority of the rules and traffic are configured between LAN and data center, with most of the capability adoption at 79%. When looking at zones, we want to use this data to determine how traffic is coming in, where traffic is going, as well as which rules are associated with each flow. This gives us a big picture into which policies have been enabled and if they are working as expected. If we see a policy that isn't enabled, we can do further analysis to determine if this was on purpose or this is a potential security gap. When a best practice assessment is created, there's an option to map zones to area of architecture. When a customer has multiple zones configured for the policies on their device, it's hard to know the significance and context of each zone just by looking at the name. However, when zones are mapped to an area of architecture, it gives meaning to the context. The zone LAN is mapped to data center. This means all the traffic pertaining to the zone LAN is related to the data center traffic. Another example is data center app, which is mapped to app tier. This means that traffic coming from the zone data center app is specific to the application tier in the data center. By classifying what zone belongs to which area of architecture, you can easily visualize how the traffic is flowing. The area of architecture page first column is the source area of architecture, and the second column is the destination area of architecture. Using the column filters, let's select DMZ for the source area of architecture and Internet for the destination area of architecture to see how the policies are configured. If this was an important flow between the two area of architectures for the company, the adoption should be close to 100%. Using the information on the area of architecture page, you will be able to identify the important policies between two areas of architecture and ensure the rules have the right security protection configured. The tags page lists all the tags associated to rules on this device. A security rule can have one or more tags. Tags are words that are used to classify a rule's intent and can be used to eliminate the possibility of creating duplicate rules. Look at the tag name IT. This indicates there are 15 rules configured for the IT group or IT applications. And the sales tag has 21 rules related to sales policies. If no tags are associated to a rule, the rule will fall under no tag. As you can see, there are 223 rules that do not have tags. You can also use the column filter to only display the tags you want to see. Under the Tags drop-down menu, select the tags and apply the filter. The rules of the tags you selected will display with the adoption data for those rules. In summary, it's a good practice to apply tags to rules to help identify the rule. The Rule Details page displays all the rules on this device. Since there are hundreds of rules, you can use the column filters to narrow your results. Let's use the filter to display just the rules with vulnerability on. Currently, 350 rules are listed on the screen. Once we apply the filter, the number of rules decreases to 269, and we can see which rules have vulnerability enabled. If you need to export the filtered data, you can use the Export Data feature to export the data into an Excel spreadsheet. The Rules Detail page is a great resource when you want to list rules based on a specific criterion. The Security Profile Adoption Summary is the first section you will see, which can be used to show management and executives' adoption and progress on one page. On the overall adoption summary graph, you will see the average adoption that is displayed in the grand total at the bottom of each tab. On this graph, you can see capability adoptions such as Wildfire, Antivirus, and Anti-Spyware. All these adoptions are at 78%. Next to the 78%, there is a -1%. This indicates adoption dropped by 1% since the last BPA report was run. No change indicates there were no improvements, additions, or changes to this report since the last BPA report. Since this company is in the high technology industry, this graph will display the industry's capability average. Looking side by side, you can compare how this company is doing in adoption comparative with their industry peers. The best practice mode graph displays the capability that received credit because a security profile passed all the best practice checks. Since an antivirus security profile did not pass, the percentage is at 0%. In summary, the graph will show you if the security profiles on your policies are adhering to best practices. The Application and User Control Adoption Summary section displays the App ID, User ID, and Service Port adoption. It is a good practice to include App IDs in policies so it identifies and permits traffic only if it matches. In looking at the Service Port adoption, we can see the company is doing well at 94%. Since the previous BPA run, they have increased by 87 points. The logging adoption graph shows the adoption percentage of security rule activity that has logging enabled at the end of each security policy session. It is important to log each policy. Similarly, log forwarding helps us ensure the log is forwarded out to the firewall to an external host. This must be configured on each security policy on the firewall or panorama. The zone protection adoption shows how many security policies have zone protection profile enabled on the source zone. In the decryption summary section, we can see three kinds of decryption: SSL forward proxy, SSL inbound inspection, and SSH proxy. In this customer's case, you have enabled SSL forward proxy. This indicates they are decrypting outbound traffic to the internet. However, since they do not have an SSL inbound inspection enabled, they are not decrypting inbound traffic from the internet to internal servers. Since they have the SSH proxy enabled, only legitimate SSH traffic is permitted in the environment. When the decryption profile is enabled, it ensures that the SSL TLS protocol parameters are applied. It also ensures the correct security protocol versions are configured and applied to the traffic. In summary, the decryption profile is applied on decryption rules. The URL categories exempted show the categories that have been exempted from decryptions. This may be due to company policies such as compliance, privacy, and other standards. As you can see, the adoption summary gives us the same information we saw in the individual tabs. The device info page lists information about the device, such as the device's hostname, serial number, software version, as well as other details. The dynamic updates box indicates how content is updating for antivirus, threats, and wildfire. Here we can see the action. In this case, the updates are downloading and installing, and then we can see the frequency. The license info box lists the licenses on this device, as well as the expiration date. If a license was already expired, it would have been highlighted here. Once a license has been renewed, you can ensure the functionalities offered in that license is back to normal and working as expected. The decryption reporting box lists how many rules are enabled for decryption, as well as which sites are being exempted from decryption. Finally, we have the adoption definitions page. This page is used for reference purposes for you to learn how the adoption percentages are calculated. Before we can improve on security, we must have visibility into what's happening in the network, and that's what Heatmaps provide. The tabs provide you the detailed information to analyze a company's capability adoption, which can be used to determine if there are security gaps. The summary page provides you with high-level metrics and comparisons that can be quickly shared with management to show current adoption and progress. Once you have analyzed the heat map data and identified the areas of focus, you can use this information to improve security.